I didn't understand how much a relationship can reveal itself in chaos until one day in Barcelona when Adele and I lost our train tickets, got the wrong train, got stranded in the wrong station, and laughed almost the entire way through it. Most people think a great relationship shows itself when everything goes right. But what I learned with Adele was this: sometimes the deepest kind of love shows itself when absolutely nothing does. This is Reframing Life, stories of love, loss, and what it means to be human. I'm Kent. In this series, my soulmate named Adele, I'm sharing the true story of how we found each other, what it meant to love like that, and what it means to keep living after she's gone. In the last episode, I shared what it was like for Adele and me to work together, live together, and move through life as real partners. In this episode, we leave the office behind and head to Barcelona for one of the funniest, most revealing days we ever had together. You'll see how quickly a beautiful travel day unraveled, how one small mistake turned into five, and why even now Barcelona still makes me laugh. By the summer of 2018, Adele and I had learned something important about travel. Yes, we loved beautiful buildings. Yes, we appreciated history. Yes, we were always up for seeing whatever city or country we were in through its culture, food, and architecture. But more than that, we had become very focused on being in the moment, not just passing through places, actually being there, feeling the texture of the day, watching people, letting a city surprise us, making memories rather than collecting proof that we had been somewhere. That was especially true on our 5-week European trip. It was one of the great adventures of our life together. And one leg of that trip had us staying near Peralada in Spain with plans to take a high-speed train to Barcelona for the day. Barcelona is one of those cities that seems to breathe from the street outward. You can feel the life in it. And by then, Adele and I were very good at moving through a place not with rigid plans, but with a kind of open-hearted curiosity. That sounds romantic, and it was. But it also requires something else. You have to be willing to let the day become what it becomes. And sometimes that works beautifully, and sometimes it turns into an accidental comedy. As you listen, I'm curious, are you someone who likes a perfectly planned day? Or do your best memories usually come from the days that go sideways? Just notice where you land. We took the high-speed train in that morning from Figueres, the station nearest where we were staying. I don't remember the exact time we arrived. And part of the reason I don't remember is probably because the whole day ended up turning into such a blur of delight and confusion. What I do remember is the feel of that morning. Sunny, almost hot, that kind of light that makes old stone feel golden. We hadn't eaten breakfast before leaving, so fairly soon after arriving, we found one of those beautiful little street-side cafes that feel so naturally European, they almost make you want to stay there forever. We had croissants and lattes. And while we were sitting there, the server noticed us glancing at the menus on the next table over. We weren't still hungry, At least I don't think we were. We were just curious. But he saw an opening and started suggesting brunch items and wine pairings. And I remember thinking, yes, this is exactly our kind of cafe. So naturally, we said yes. The wine came first. Of course it did. And then we toasted to our life, to the trip, to celebrating every moment. That was very us. And the wine, like so much of the wine the whole European trip, was exceptional. From there, we wandered through the old part of the city, taking in shops, streets, sounds, all of it. And then sometime after one, we landed at another little cafe or restaurant and settled in again. Adele and I love people watching. Absolutely loved it. Give us a patio, a glass of wine, and an interesting city moving around us, and we were in heaven. And as we sat there, Adele began telling me stories about a previous visit she had made to Barcelona with her sister, Chimmy, not long before Chimmy passed away. One of the places that stood out in Adele's memory was the Grand Hotel Central. She talked about it with that particular softness people get when they are remembering something that mattered. And because Adele was never one to merely admire an idea when she could act on it, she pulled out her phone and started checking rates and availability for 2 days later. That was the plan. 2 days later, come back into Barcelona, stay overnight, enjoy the rooftop pool, take our time, simple. Except Adele was also a woman of action, and somewhere in the process, instead of checking and dreaming, she booked it. Not for 2 days later, for that night, the same night. We discovered this as we were leaving lunch, and the confirmation email arrived. Adele, always very good at double checking details, looked at it and realized what had happened. Now, under normal circumstances, that would already be enough of a story. But we were not remotely prepared to stay overnight. No change of clothes, no toiletries, no plan. So she tried phoning the hotel to fix the reservation. But between timing and language issues, that wasn't going especially smoothly. So we decided we'd just walk over to the hotel in person and sort it out, which we did. And to their credit, the front desk staff were wonderful. They told us they could make the adjustment, but it would take a little while. And then they did something that, in hindsight, was probably the beginning of our downfall. They invited us up to the rooftop patio for complimentary drinks while we waited. Now, if you know anything about Adele and I traveling, you could probably guess what happened next. We said yes. The rooftop was spectacular. The view over Barcelona was incredible, and the margaritas were delicious. So delicious, in fact, that we had a second round. Again, very us. At some point in all of this, we were getting out documents, credit cards, moving things around between our backpack and Adele's purse. And without really noticing, we also switched who was carrying what. That mattered, because in the backpack were our return train tickets. Eventually, the front desk staff came back with the corrected reservation. We thanked them, realized what time it was, and hurried out to make our train back to Figueres. And it wasn't until we were about halfway to the station that we realized we no longer had the backpack. At that point, There was no time to go back to the hotel and retrieve it and still catch our train. So we kept going, hoping the station staff might somehow be able to look up our reservations, either using our passports or credit cards or just out of sheer pity. We got there just in time, almost, but not enough time to solve it. So we did the next sensible thing. We bought tickets for the next train out. Problem solved. Except it wasn't, because we assumed it was another high-speed train. It was not. It was the scenic, stopping everywhere, taking 3 times as long train. By then, I think reality had started to loosen its grip on us a bit. There was just something so absurd about the chain of events. Still, eventually we arrived in Figueres. Only not at the station we had left from that morning, because apparently Figueres had more than one station, and this was not the right one. Now we had no car, no backpack, and no easy way back to where we were staying. We managed to get a taxi and told the driver to take us to the other station. He looked puzzled, very puzzled, but we insisted. So he drove us there until he couldn't, because the high-speed train station was fully locked down for the night behind giant security gates. That was the moment. That was the moment when the whole thing tipped over from inconvenience to pure comedy. We just looked at each other and lost it. Not polite laughter, not strained laughter, the kind of laughter that comes when a day becomes so ridiculously beautiful, unmanageable, that resisting it no longer makes any sense. So we paid the taxi driver extra to take us back to the private golf and country club where we were staying in Paralata. Surely that would be the end of it. Except no, because when we got there, security had our rental car's license plate on file, but not our names. And of course, we didn't know the license number. So now, after all of this, we were effectively locked out, which meant the security guard had to phone our friends we were traveling with, wake them up to come and authorize us to get into the country club. By the time we finally got in, it was close to 1 a.m. And then we had to explain the whole comedy of errors to our friends. They stood there in amazement while Adele and I retold the story, laughing our heads off. I think they honestly could not understand why we found it so funny. If that had happened to most people, it probably would have been a fight, or at least a really miserable evening. For us, it became one of the funniest memories of the entire trip. If you've ever had a date that should have ruined itself but somehow became a favorite memory instead, you're not alone. That's not carelessness. Sometimes that's life showing you who you are together. And that, for me, is the real story of Barcelona. Not the missing backpack, not the wrong train, not even the locked gate at the end. The real story is what didn't happen. We didn't turn on each other. We didn't start assigning blame. We didn't try to win the moment. No one said, well, this was your fault. No one withdrew. No one hardened. What happened instead was something much more important. We stayed on the same side. That was one of the great gifts of being with Adele. Life did not need to be perfect for us to enjoy it. A mistake didn't have to become a verdict. A disruption didn't have to become rupture. Somehow, even in the middle of inconvenience, we remained in the day together. And the day, for all its chaos, still belonged to us. In fact, it may have belonged to us more because it went wrong. Because when everything is curated and planned and smooth, you don't always see the deeper thing. But when plans start falling apart, you find out very quickly whether two people know how to flow together. We did. Not because we were flawless, not because we never made mistakes. Clearly we did. But because we knew how to stay soft, how to stay amused, how to stay close, even while mildly stranded in Spain. Looking back, I see how easy it would have been for that day to become frustration, irritation, or one more traveler's story about everything that went wrong. Instead, it became a story about alignment. I learned that one of the quiet signs of a truly great relationship is this: when life goes off script, you don't lose each other in it. You improvise, you laugh, you keep going. And years later, what you remember is not the inconvenience, it's the feeling of being in it together. That lesson changed me because it made me understand that joy in a relationship is not just romance, it's resilience with laughter in it. If any part of this feels familiar, you're welcome to share a line in the comments. Maybe it's a travel disaster that somehow became one of your favorite memories, or maybe just we laughed our way through it too. And if you want to keep walking this story with me, you can subscribe. In the next episode, we'll stay with Adele in full life a little longer and move into another part of what made our relationship so rich. What it meant to truly live in the moment and turn ordinary days into lasting memories. That's where we'll go next.